Laksha. It's going to be one interesting part that you will be going through today. To tell you a little more about your speaker, Laksha is a passionate and a dedicated counselor, a counseling psychologist from Bangalore, with over a year of hands on experience in dynamic fields of therapy and child psychology. She is currently an in house psychologist at Health Basics. Laksha's approach is deeply empathetic, focuses on holistic well being, and empowering individuals to navigate their unique challenges. So, I wish you all the best. Be active, be proactive, enjoy this session. It's something really, really close to to reach to a child's heart um, while experiencing art therapy. So, all the best, and over to you, Laksha. Thank you for this coming in for this workshop.
Thank you so much, Rashi. So good evening, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces from Health Basic, and I see a lot of new people also. So welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope the New Year has been going well for everybody. Today I'll be doing a topic that is very close to my sort of practice. I would say more or less because art is something that I also connect with personally. So I think today's workshop is also something that's very personal, I would say, which is something that's very close to my practice, something that I use both in my counseling practice with children and with adults. So I think all of us are aware of what art therapy is, and it is basically, I would say, if you have to put it in simple words, it's a therapeutic approach, where we integrate art making uh, into the therapeutic session or into the therapeutic space, either in a group setting or in a one-to-one setting. We integrate art, we integrate creative practices because it is shown to explore people's thoughts, explore people's the things that we can't usually we have words to express. I think art is a very nice way to get into people's minds or trying to understand them. So art therapy, if I have to put it, is a therapeutic practice that integrates the creative art making with psychological principles to help individuals, to help children express their emotions, explore their thought, and also get a sense of awareness about themselves, about what's happening inside. Today, we'll be focusing more on art therapy in connection to how we can use it in our child counseling practice, right? So it is a non-verbal and a very creative outlet for children who might find it hard to articulate their feelings, right? Because children do not have the right vocabulary, or they might not know how to express a certain feeling, but then they can express it. It's a very no very I would say, proactive and a very interesting form of non-verbal communication for us to understand the child. So in the rapport building process, in the process when we're trying, when the storytelling is happening, so if you're using a narrative approach, you are trying to get the story out of the child, or trying to get the story out of our client, right? So at that time, art therapy works as a interesting approach, right? um, so for especially for children and adults, children and adolescents, it provides a safe space because to explore their feelings, their understandings in a more I would say safer way, right? Because the second you start asking them questions, you're like, okay, what's happening, tell me, it feels like almost you are, maybe it's like an interview or it's like an interrogation. But when we use art, when we use all of these things, we're giving the child the control in the session. They feel a sense of control because they're like, okay, you know what, the crayon is in my hand, so I can do what I want to do. So there is that level of that sort of independence with their feelings, with their emotions. And over time it also fosters resilience and helps them. Art is a great coping mechanism. Having hobbies, we know as children growing up how having different hobbies have helped us. Parents might put us in like these dance classes, music classes, and growing up somehow those become our coping mechanism as an adult, right? We keep going back to maybe we might attend a concert, or we might start singing ourselves, post it on on Instagram, or just for our sake we might just go to like these gigs, or like what are these small events we would sing for our friends. So we are also, art is something that's it connects all of us, right? So in therapy we use artistic mediums, or we use these art forms like drawing, painting, clay modeling, sculpting, collage making, to process these complex emotions that children go through. And it's a very in a supportive and non-judgmental environment. So this therapeutic approach is especially effective for children because their emotional development is usually tied to the capacity of their creative expression. So there are I was watching these reels a few days ago where I think this kindergarten teacher had like it's a picture of half a boat, and the children have to like fill the other half with something creative, right? It's one of these kindergarten schools, I think in Europe or somewhere, and it was like one picture of like a boat, just like a line drawing of a boat, and children are so creative with that half picture of a boat. They are creating so many scenarios. They are creating a restaurant using that just half of that board. They're so creative, there's no like direction. They're like, you can do whatever you want. And children, especially younger children, they want a space to use that creative outlet that they have, because everything is new to them, right? So anything for us, something, maybe writing a paragraph might be something that we're so used to, but for them, using the knowledge that they are learning is something that is very new. So it becomes a very beautiful outlet where they can express themselves creatively. It encourages young people to externalize their emotions, and also reduce this internal stress feeling, because we're like, let it out some way, let it out. So just taking a paper and scribbling on it lets out that feeling of anger or that feeling of stress, right? So by engaging this creative process, what are we doing? We can identify, we can put vocabulary to those feelings, and teach our clients or teach the children that we're working with is to, this is what might be happening, or this is what you might be feeling, and this is what you can do to cope with it, right? So while we are also building, and while this is happening, we are also helping them build their self-esteem. We are able to engage them in like problem solving. How can they cope by themselves during these stressful situations? So whenever we are addressing anxiety, when we are addressing difficulty with communication, when you're addressing trauma, so I feel like with a lot of kids that I have worked with who have gone through trauma, I feel like art therapy has helped me a lot, right? So it serves as a bridge for us between that conscious and the unconscious mind. Because when you have a child who's gone through a traumatic incident in their personal life, suddenly what happens is that they're in that freeze state. They don't know how to get out of it, right? They're in that freeze state, and no matter how much you ask them, they will just sit in silence in the session, right? I think with adults, at least, they have this like, okay, you not have to say something in the session, so they might like just try to beat around. They're like, no, this what happened, that's what happened, then not get to the point. But with children, it's like when they're in that freeze state, they will not speak. They will just sit in that silence. They will not say anything. At that time, just giving a child something to for them to just work on. We won't ask them, do this, do that. We're just giving them a paper, we're giving them some crayons, we're like, do whatever you want, right? 2 sessions, 3 sessions, the child is just coming, they're just having like, they're just drawing, they're just coloring, painting. And then slowly, when they feel comfortable with you, because you're the first person that's letting them do what they want. Because everybody around them is like, okay, talk about it, what's happening, tell us, tell us, tell us. But you are the first person that's just letting them do. And somehow art is a medium through which that's happening, right? So there are so many ways that you can personalize art therapy into your practice, is what I'm trying to say. And basically, at the end of the day, it expresses what might often go unspoken, or kept hidden inside. So this is an introduction to art therapy. So I will quickly also we'll go through what does emotional expression mean. I think this is a very common term that all of us has to have to know as therapists. I think our main, I would say, the job role is to help our clients to express their emotions, I would say, as therapists. So when we talk about emotional expression, it is basically the process of communicating feelings through verbal or non-verbal means. I would say that's a more, formal definition. It involves sharing all our emotions, in a session, what's going on in our head, like emotions like happiness, sadness, excitement, through various forms, right? Either when you see a client walking in, Right? 2 weeks they might have walked in just like, just put their bag down and they're just sitting. So you know that something's happened. So you know that okay, the client or the child might be feeling sad, or the child might be feeling upset about something. But sometimes the client might walk in, they might be giggling. They might be like, oh my god, what happened today, and they might be sharing. So then you are able to understand through their facial expression, all of that, okay, that the child is in a jolly mood, that something good, or they're feeling happy. So basically, we use not just verbal communication, but non-verbal communication like facial expression, voice, tone of voice, volume of voice, how their body language is in the session. So for children, at least, I think emotional expression serves as a very important thing to understand and regulate their inner world, because for them they are feeling all of these feelings for almost the first time. If you're looking for younger children around the age of 5, 4, 5, they're all feeling these feelings, like they're coming out into the world, from their homes, very protective environment from their homes. They're coming, they're learning feelings of betrayal. They're feeling feelings of jealousy suddenly, because they're like, okay, my friend got a chance, I didn't get a chance, and something is happening inside, right? I feel like I want to go punch a wall, or I want to go and push that friend. They don't know what that feeling is, right? So it's a very, I would say, very fresh, very new feeling that they are feeling. So where emotional expression is basically um, a way to understand the child's inner world, and for them to also be able to regulate this inner world. So only when we start having conversations about, okay, you know what, this is what you're feeling, this is what feelings are, this is what emotions are, this is a situation where you might feel this way, and that might show up in your body like this. When you are in a during a when a teacher is asking you a question, you might feel like your heart is beating fast. That is called feeling anxious. That is called feeling, scared. So you're trying to tell them, you're trying to put this vocabulary into them, right? So that is how emotional expression works for children. And it also helps them navigate their milestones, and also improve their social interactions. So when they have a sense of where they can express their feelings, or they are able to understand what's happening, they are able to interact better with their friends or with the people around them. And it also builds this sense of self-confidence, because they're able to understand what's happening. They're able to put words, or they're able to put something to that feeling that they're having in their inner world, right? So why is it so important for children when we talk about emotional expression? I think it's very important for their development mostly, right? Because when they are able to express emotions, or when they're able to feel freely without that judgment of you can't cry, or you can't feel scared, because there are a lot of gender roles. You can't cry because you're a boy, or you can't laugh too loudly because you're a girl. There are so many things that is just floating around. So the second we stop children from feeling a certain emotion, what happens is that they are more likely to become emotionally very unintelligent, right? Because when they don't know that, when they're trying to feel something and someone is not giving them permission to, right? Because when they're growing up with parents, what usually happens is that they are like, okay, parents, whatever parents say is probably right, because they are the only guide they have in the world. So when the parents are like, no, 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 don't cry so much, or don't laugh so much, what happens is they're like, okay, you know what, I think it's wrong, I shouldn't be feeling this way. But when we give them this permission, or that freedom, I wouldn't say permission, I would say this freedom to just feel their emotions, what happens is that they are more emotional intelligent humans. They're more aware of themselves, their feelings. They're more empathetic to others feelings also, right? Because once they accept that, okay, this is feeling that I'm allowed to have, that also translates into empathy, right? And also improves communication, right? So they can tell, you know what, I think I'm feeling stressed right now, can we not do this, instead of saying, you know what, something is happening in my body, I feel they, instead of not having vocabulary for it, they can tell what is happening, right? So again, if they're suppressing their emotional issues, I think one very important thing that I mentioned earlier. The other thing that I've also noticed is, I think, a lot of behavioral issues, like attention seeking, or sort of other behavioral issues that we commonly see with children, also stems from when children are not able to express themselves, right? So they find other means to let this emotion out, right? So if they're feeling stressed, or if they're feeling angry, the right way to express it, to like maybe talk to a teacher about it, or to sort of deal with it in a more appropriate way. So sometimes what happens is that they might get angry and they might push a friend in the playground, or they might snatch someone's hair, or they might do something like that. And that is something we will be like, oh my god, this child has, like, some conduct disorder, or this child doesn't want to listen. But it could be simple that the child just doesn't know how to express an emotion, or like a more these more frustrating, or these more nuanced feelings like anger and sadness, right? And again, this growing up, it also causes a lot of struggle in terms of their inability to form relationships or manage relationships, because they're constantly not sure of what they are feeling, right? So this is a sort of brief understanding about um, emotional expression. So now we will connect that with art therapy in terms of how can we use art therapy to sort of improve emotional expression, right? So I think one sort of benefit, I would say, to integrate art therapy in our approaches is that there is an enhanced emotional awareness and expression, because it's a safe space for the child, as I mentioned earlier, right? We are giving the control to the child. So there is this sense of, what, I can explore my feelings, I can understand. We're not telling them, this, we are going to do this activity because I want you to understand your feelings. You are just giving them this thing, and we are letting them take control, do whatever they want. So that is one, I would say, benefit of art therapy. I think it's not very directive, more or less. It's a very non-directive approach where, you're giving the child the control. And these activities or these artworks also helps children convey feelings like anger or sadness based on, the colors they are picking. So we can also make assessments on what is happening within ourselves. We don't have to, like, do it with the child, but we are, when the child is picking a certain color, or the way they're using the pencil. So I remember one time when I was working with this child in the 5th grade, we were using, I think, story. She wanted to write a story, basically, and she's been fighting for 3-4 sessions. Or we sit and did in session, or she would sit and write, because she's like, at home nobody lets me write, because they're, like, constantly telling me to study, and nobody lets me read my storybooks and all of that. So the previous session, she would write neatly. She would make sure that, the words are on the line. But this particular session, her thoughts were just racing so fast that she was just scribbling on the paper, you know. And she was like, "Ma'am, I'm so much is coming, but I'm not able to, like, stop it." And the way she was scribbling, I could sense that there was something that was going on inside that she wanted to, let out. So at that time, I just, before she sort of continued writing, I just told her, take a deep breath. We did some breathing exercise to calm her nervous system, and then I told her to write. So on that day, I think a lot of exploration happened, because I just noticed that she was writing a little bit faster than her usual pace. So when the way the children might be coloring, are they coloring within the lines, or are they, like, this scribbling too fast? So we are getting all the signs and signals that we need to understand what's happening, and they are also getting that creative freedom, right? And I would say the second thing, which is very, I think, common, that we all know, is that it reduces stress or anxiety, because our mind is focused on doing that particular thing. So art has this sort of very therapeutic and calming, nature to it, because we're focusing on the particular thing, especially with, mandala art, or when we're making collage, where we are focusing on getting that thing done. So we are focusing, okay, this is the next color I want to use. And so there is that sense of calmness. There is a sense of, okay, you know what, we are more focused on that particular activity, that our mind that has been wandering just comes to the focus. It's just focusing on that particular activity. And again, it improves communication skills. So for children who might feel hard to discuss their thoughts, art therapy sort of acts as a bridge for the therapist and for the child. So when we sit and interpret these creations, the therapists and, the caregivers, or, the teachers, we can all gain insight into, okay, what is the emotional state of the child. Also, again, it increase self esteem and confidence, because again, once they are able to sort of get in touch with themselves, I feel that confidence, that self esteem, all of that improves by itself. And support for trauma and emotional healing, here I think it's beneficial for children, because they're able to externalize, their experience in a manner which is a little bit, like, less threatening, and just asking them to open up about it. What, tell me what happened, or tell me this, what, like, when you talk about it, it sort of just invalidates their trauma, one, and also it's very insensitive, right? But when you just give them this paper, we are like, what, try to just draw whatever you want to, like about that day. If you remember something particular, do you remember how the room looked? So we're just trying to get into the child's mind without really poking them or forcing them, right? So especially in trauma, I think I've used art therapy with a lot of children or a lot of adults, due with my trauma informed sessions. So it allows them to externalize their feelings, externalize that pain or their experience in a way that is less threatening. And also I think over time they're able to heal through their artwork. They're able to heal through, like, because when we keep using it in our practice, I think over time we are able to see the changes also. So it's like a more, I would say, like a physical document or a physical thing that's present to understand, okay, this is how the child's mind was a few months back, and through the therapy or through sessions, this is the changes that we've noticed, right? And also it helps with develop it sort of helps with problem solving and coping skills, because whenever there are some challenges, like when we are trying to draw or color or creating art, there are obviously challenges that come up, right? Because I would say one challenge is that they'd be like, oh, maybe I'm not good at it. Like, you give a child a clay and they want to form something, they want to make an elephant, but then it doesn't look like an elephant because they don't have the skills, or they don't have the what to say, like the create, like how actual sculptor might make an elephant. They don't have all of those skills, but then they're trying to make, so they're also trying to find a way to make sure it looks like an elephant, or make sure to find a way that it depicts their feelings, right? So here they are able to, I think it also improves their problem solving and coping. So now we'll move into understanding emotional expression, particularly in children and adults. And here I wanted to focus on what are some of the challenges, because with children, I think the first and very foremost challenge I would say is that this limited vocabulary, because they do not have the words to express what they are feeling. I think most of the time we as therapists are like, okay, how do we go about it? What do we do? How do we take, because we might ask them a question and they give a very direct answer, right? And then we might not know how to carry it on. Okay, with counselors here who are working with both kids and adults, I think you might notice that with adults the storytelling is a lot more wider, right? They are able to connect one thing to the next thing, and they are able to make a mind map. But with children, you ask them one thing, they will tell like this whole narrative of story, right? Okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, but they might not necessarily point out as to what they were feeling. They'll be like, yeah, like if you ask them, okay, how were you feeling during that incident, they'll be like, I was feeling like, like I wanted to run away from there. I was feeling like, I didn't want to be in that place. I felt like I want to be in my room. So felt like wanting to be in my room is not a feeling. But what does that feeling indicate, right? That indicates that, okay, wanting to be in my room feels that this space didn't feel safe for them. So maybe they were feeling anxious or they were feeling scared. But they won't say I was feeling anxious when I was in that party, right? Or they didn't feel like, they won't say that. So there is a very limited vocabulary for emotions. And this is at least for children who are at least open to speaking. With younger children, if you're looking at age 3 4, there is no vocabulary only, right? There's very limited vocabulary. So that is one very important challenge I feel, because as therapists we need that understanding, we need communication to happen. Only then we can help the child when they need something, right? So that is one common challenge. Then I'd say the second is this fear of judgment or rejection, right? Because before them meeting their therapist, everybody around them has either invalidated their feelings, made them feel like they're not supposed to be having that feeling itself, or they feel like, okay, you know what, maybe I'm the only one having this feeling, nobody else has this feeling, right? So when they come to a therapy space, they also expect, because you are an adult as well, right? So their experience with adults is that they won't understand my feelings, or maybe this feeling that I'm having is not right, so I don't know if I should tell them or not. So there is that fear of judgment, or there is fear of rejection, which also pushes them into not talk about what they might be going through. And I think third is just to difficulty understanding the emotions itself, is in terms of, if you're looking at children with neurodevelopmental issues, or you're looking at just children in general, again, because there is no vocabulary, there is difficulty in understanding, right? Even with us, with the huge vocabulary that we have for all the emotions and all the feelings, sometimes we might just feel like we're feeling all the emotions at the same time, right? So that time they, but with children it's a little more common, because they're feeling all of this more or less for the first time. right? And then past trauma or negative experience. So in the past they might have been have some traumatic event or some negative experience when they were trying to open up about their emotions, or they were trying to open up about something, and that impacted them in a negative way. Immediately that went into the door and was like, okay, we are not going to talk about it. So that again becomes a challenge for us to tap on. Again, cultural and social norms, right? So here in there's a lot of cultural and social norms. So boys might feel pressured that they have to stay strong, right? Especially with adolescent boys, suddenly there is this change of, okay, you know what, you can't spend this much time with your lady friends, or you can't spend this much time with your female friends, you can't spend this much time with your mother, because now you're a strong boy, you have to be independent. This is at the age of 12, right? And for girl, and they're not supposed to show like vulnerability, you have to be strong. Suddenly a child that was depending on his mother going and talking to her, suddenly people around him are like, you know what, you can't talk to her about this, you're a boy, or something, you can't cry about all of this, eh? So a lot of this language is sort of fostering around, I think, the cultural and the social norm. So I think, and for, again, I think for women and for like girl, like especially in the teenagers, there are a lot of these norms that stop them from expressing what is happening within them, right? And then this overwhelming intensity of emotions, because of how sometimes they might like anger and fear and all of that, like they're quite overwhelming at sometimes, right? So they might not know how to express it constructively. They might just start screaming, or they might start throwing tantrums, or they might just have aggressive behavior, or just like very, 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 like loud outbursts. So suddenly, because they're like, they don't know what to do with it. It's like when inside them there's one person that's just screaming and they don't know what to do. So it's quite overwhelming for them also. And I would say the seventh thing is the lack of safe spaces. Again, as I mentioned, that because there are people around them are not supportive or would want to listen to them, there is no space for expression. And again, eighth one is the, like, especially with children with autism or ADHD or various anxiety disorders, they might have trouble in identifying what this feeling is, or understanding or expressing, right? So that is when I think art therapy comes in, because art therapy more or less is one of those therapeutic approaches that doesn't involve any speaking, that doesn't involve any talking or asking questions, where most of the other therapy, even if you're looking at a person-centered approach or looking at a narrative approach, there it still involves them to speak, right? But I feel in every sort of aspect with art therapy, and here I'm including music, drama, all of that still is a very physical way. It's still a very non-verbal way for children to communicate, right? So here, how can we use creativity to overcome these barriers, right, as counselors? Because um, again, as I said, it's a non-verbal way to express or process what they are feeling. So by using creative outlets, I will come to like different ways, different things that we can use for kids with different ages. So things like drawing, painting, storytelling, music, dance, all of this helps in understanding the story once. One important thing, it helps them in the storytelling process, and also helps them get in touch with their own emotions, right? So it when so all of these very overwhelming feelings, I was talking about how when kids are having very overwhelming feelings, they don't know how to express it. By finding ways through art, it still becomes less harmful for them also, and for the people around them. So here we are using creative ways to just all these creative processes to foster that sense of control. So I will just go through some techniques, and then we will come back. um, yeah. So if you're looking at drawing and coloring specifically, I think one activity that you can use is draw your feelings. You can call it draw your feelings, whatever you want to. So here basically the child is, we give them different crayons, we give them different colors, and we ask them to draw how they might be feeling. So you can just ask them to draw like a stick figure of themselves, and you can ask them to color it with all colors that they feel like they might be feeling. So if the child is sort of using colors like pink and yellow, basically all of the primary colors, you can sense that, okay, the child is in a good mood, or the child is, and this is not just because they're using those colors. We also look at when they're picking the color, what colors are they picking, how are they coloring into the color, how are they coloring into the picture. So we notice all of that and try to understand. So they're using more darker colors, which is like dark blue or blacks and the grays and all of that. Then we can be like, okay, you know what, maybe the child is not feeling okay, and maybe that is something we can ask them, what, why did you pick this gray color, or why did you pick red color. So we ask them their interpretation also, why they picked that color, right? So that is one thing where you can just, before every session, before you start, maybe you can take 5 to 10 minutes for them to just sit and color that stick figure of themselves. That also can be like a good tracker for them to track over time, for you also as a therapist to understand how have they been feeling over time. Mandala is something that I usually give for kids who are like, adolescents, kids in like 10 to 15 age group. Because here, either I think drawing mandala again is a very, like, kids get very overwhelmed. They're like, oh, I have to draw mandala. They're excited to do it, but then in a session, I try to keep it as easy as possible, where children don't have to have that. There shouldn't be like a learning curve for them to learn. That again becomes an added stress. So mandala coloring is where you just take like pre-drawn mandalas, printouts. There are so many available on the internet, and they can color this to just represent how they are feeling. You can just tell them to pick colors that they feel like is speaking to them, and just make them color in the session, especially during sessions where there's a lot of just, where they are also confused, right? They're like, I'm feeling this is happening, that's happening, but I don't know what. When they're feeling, when there's a lot of things happening, I think that sort of brings their focus and reduces that sense of like that jumpiness, or that that overthinking, anxious feeling. So I use it there, so it promotes that focus and just gives them a sense of emotional balance. Because when they are also stressed and we are trying to talk to them, it doesn't help out. So at that time you can use all of these things. So I would say, like, if you are planning to integrate art therapy or some form of this in your practice, is to always have things in your daily folder, or whatever you're carrying to the school or to your centers, is to have printouts of mandala, to have printouts of these things that you can use with children, right? Because in the session you might feel like, okay, you know what, I think I need a mandala, but then I don't know what to do, so you can't sit and draw in the session also. So I think you should just keep all of these things prepped, like just have like a folder with things that you would want to use in the session. So next, I would focus with clay modeling. I think clay helps all age groups more or less. Even with adults, also I feel like clay helps a lot, because I think there is that, it sort of engages all your senses, right? Especially if you're looking at clay, like clay modeling for adults, especially pottery or ceramic making. If anybody has experienced this, I think you might relate. Is that you have to be so focused, right? You can't let your emotions even switch 1 second. You have to be focused on that wheel, making sure that the pressure of your hands is a certain way, to make sure that you're making the shape, right? So suddenly a mind that is not being able to center finds a way to center itself, right? This is for adults, but for children, I think we can use clay, these colorful play-doh clay, or any kind of clay that's easily available in the school environment for children. We can use, again, we can use different kind of clay. We can be like, pick a color that you want, that you are feeling, using colors there as well. Or we can do something where they are creating specific objects in their mind, like using clay basically to create objects that represent different emotions. It can be like fear or anger or joy, right? So here again, I think clay sort of engages all your senses more or less, the touch, your vision, there's a lot of things happening at the same time. So I feel like it is a very effective way, something that I enjoy using with children. And kids also love clay, right? I don't know if it's this age group or like this generation or what, but I feel like everybody loves clay. They want to use clay and do something with it, even if it's not just making anything, just to sit and play with it, like a toy or something. Like, they really enjoy it. So I think clay modeling, I think it sort of calms them down also. So we can use that. And then one more thing is that we can ask them to model something. We can for a monster or the feelings monster, right? Where they design a monster, like like, can you use this clay and design a monster to embody a particular feeling, a feeling where you might not feel comfortable, or feeling where you don't like feeling, right? So and then they might um, create that monster. They're trying to focus, they're channeling all of that anger. Or especially this works when when two kids are fought, and you're trying to calm that child down. You're like, you know what, I know you're feeling like there are a lot of things happening. So can we use that energy to create a monster and put all of that energy into this monster, right? So immediately they put that, and that while they're making it, immediately just calms them down as well, right? And they can use clay to make a portrait of themselves. So you can give them like a paper, or maybe you can make them do like a 3D figure, where they are creating something that represents them. So maybe they can do something that they really enjoy making, or they can do a self portrait of themselves, like of their face, of their how their hair looks, or they're wearing glasses, all of that. So they're basically trying to draw, sculpt themselves using clay. And we can also use clay where they can represent different things using the clay, right? We also use toys with children, but I think clay is where they are only making the toys, they're only representing their they can do their mother, father, or like their siblings. They can make all of them with the clay, and then they can use that to tell the story, right? So that sort of facilitates storytelling, and sort of that processing in a more playful way for the children. So I think at the end goal of whatever we are planning to do is to engage the storytelling process, is to just let them narrate what is happening in their inner world, right? So whatever we're using, we need to make sure that that is the end goal, right? So next is collage making. So collage making requires a little bit, I would say, more uh, planning, and you can't do it directly in the session. But we can use collages for different things, right? One is we can this collage making works especially well with with children in that adolescent age group, like 10 to 15 years old age group, right? It works really well with them. So there we can make like a support system collage, where they're representing. So this can be used for like more positive things, like let's trace your journey of your life through the collage, or what makes me happy collage, so they collate a lot of pictures, images, that brings them a lot of joy and comfort. So here we are able to understand, one, what are the things so that the child is like, what grounds the child, right? What are the things that they enjoy? So children might put like music, they might put dance, they might put their favorite sport, they might put a picture of their friend, or they might put pictures of their favorite movies or something. So we know that, okay, this is the kind of music that this child enjoys. So we can, in the future, if we want some techniques or something to calm them down, we know this is where we can reach out to. Again, what makes me happy collage, again basically different things for them to just again, that the process of tearing that paper and sticking it in the paper, making it look colorful, that itself is a process. But here we can do a lot of just self understanding, right? So if we ask them to make a life journey collage, they are able to capture the key moments of their life, right? Maybe like their first birthday, or their some birthday of theirs, or sometime where they won a prize. And that also connects back into techniques in positive psychology, where they're able to find gratitude in their life. One thing, they are able to look at the milestones, and able to find all the people that have been there in these milestones, right? It could be a parent, or it could be a friend, or it could be their sibling. They're able to find, okay, these are the people that were there with me during these milestones, right? So again, that again grounds them. They're able to think of their life in a more broader sense, rather than just the problem that they might be facing, right? And then the support system collage again is very similar to the life journey, but this is more specific to the people around them, right? Who are the people who's in this child's life, or what are the places they love to go to, what are the different kinds of food they like, or what gives them comfort, basically. So again, their kids are able to the second you tell children to do something that's connected to them, they love it, right? Because they are able to process, okay, these are the things I like, these are the things I don't like, and they're very excited to show you also, right? They're like, and then they want to ask you as a therapist, ma'am, what do you like, right? So there is that, that therapeutic relationship is also getting built. And it again, very unconsciously, a lot of processes are happening, right? Where we're just building rapport with the child, because the child feels that, okay, this person is interested to know about me, right? This person who's in front of me wants to know about my life. So then that also fosters that, I would say, that therapeutic relationship also gets built. Art journaling, again, this is something that I would say is something that also I have used personally in my life. I think I would say growing up, I didn't know it was called art journaling growing up, but then I think now there is more, cohesive words, or like, the the purpose or like the objective behind it is more, I would say, clearer. But this again works for children in the young adult age group, where rather than just journaling, when we tell them, okay, no, just journal your feelings and write what you're feeling, this is a little more, I would say, creative way. One is the mood tracker. So basically here you can ask them to make a daily chart of their day, and then they can visually track how they are feeling. So various symbols that they can use, various colors or various doodles. So every day that helps them ground down to the day. Like you can tell them, before you go to bed or before you are done for the day, just sit for 5 minutes and just visually draw or use symbols to represent how you were feeling, right? um So what happens here? They builds that self awareness, and they're having something to go back and look to, and they can also recognize their emotional patterns. So that also helps us as a therapist, right? And then the second thing that is called the stress dump page. So basically here they use a lot of scribbles and they use a lot of bold, chaotic designs for them to dump their stress into that book, right? So again, this is again a safer outlet for them to release their tension, because when you're angry you want to go and harm something, you want to push something, you want to throw something. So we are giving a space for that physical feeling of anger or that physical feeling of stress to come out, but they're just putting it in a more safer place, like their journal, basically. So they can use thicker markers or like bolder markers or like a lot of scribbling, and all of that. Yeah, and then storytelling. So with art journaling also, there are so many different things that we can do. Again, collage making can be also be a part of art journaling, where you are like, you can pick up different things from your day and you can put it in your journal and make it like an art journal, or different things like that. Yeah. And now is different storytelling activities, right? So we can use, like, we can teach them what comics are or comic strips. We can ask them to make a comic strip about their life, so where the storytelling is happening through comics. So I'm sure you're aware of what comics are: different panels which shows different parts of a story, right? So they can use these symbols or they can use these facial expressions to share their story, right? And then emotional based storytelling is where you can ask them to choose a particular emotion and you can ask them to create a story about it, right? This is something that I used with the child I was talking about, where every session I would give her a emotion to write a story about, and she would beautifully write a story about every emotion. And through the sessions, we realized that all of these stories were actually incidents that had happened in her life that she had put beautifully into another character, right? So the story building, she was able to build that story. She was, in a way, sort of trying to, this story she never told me in part of the session. All of this came about her childhood, right? Because there was some trauma related incidents. So all of that didn't come out in the session when we were having like our narrative or like the talking therapy, but all of that slowly came out during the storytelling, right? And I think towards the end, I think she also opened up, saying that this was actually based, some of these stories or whatever was based on actually like things that I had gone through and all of that. So I think that again, because anytime you ask someone to tell a story, there is always some personal element that is connected to it, right? So just giving them that permission. So when you put it into another character, it feels a little bit okay to talk about it than compared to say, what, this is my story. Putting it into another character and then all of that, it also helps the child also just give them a categorical understanding of what's happening, right? So I think, apart from this, there are various techniques. I think in this 1 hour I could only cover so many, but then you can use music, you can use dance. If you want more, you can read up about dance therapy, how certain movements help children. I think how different movements, different theatrical ways of expressing their emotions, theater, this the what is that, your street plays, all of this also helps children a lot in just expressing their emotions. So in different forms are there. I think all we need to just research a little more, understand based on the child's interest, what form of art are they connecting to, right? And then tapping on that and then finding a way to connect that or integrate that with the sessions that you're conducting. Right? So we'll just go through a small case study, and how what kind of art therapy helped this child. Right. So here we have a child who's a 9-year-old boy. His name is Kiran. So he had been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, right? He experienced frequent panic attacks, and particularly when his mother was separated from him, or when he was facing new environments like the school, or different, like in the house, in his apartment itself. Going for a friend's birthday party, or going to the school, or going anywhere new, like going to the mall, anywhere that was causing a lot of panic or a lot of anxiety with the child. So apart from the anxiety, he was also sort of showing a lot of somatic symptoms like stomach ache and headaches and all of that, and body pain. So here, his parent had sought out art therapy as part of his treatment. So while there was the whole processing happening, they also sought out for art therapy to help the child, right? So here Kiran was someone who was very interested in drawing and coloring and all of that. So that's when the parents said, you know what, we can try this therapy also with the child, because they felt that he was more like because he was not interested in going out into new spaces. That meant that he would spend a lot of time by himself, right? And his hobbies were more around coloring and drawing. It was not around using toys and all of that. So here the art therapist had introduced him to create the worry monsters out of clay and paper. So the first like few sessions, they were just making these monsters, how I spoke about, making the clay monster and putting all of your fears or whatever your thoughts into that monster, right? So here they were using that monster as a metaphor to help with this child's anxiety, and they were externalizing their fears, the child's fears or the child's worries, into that monster, right? So this helped the child a lot, because the child was able to put all of his feelings into that monster. So suddenly this monster was a like external representation of whatever he felt, and he would take this monster that he made every time he went out to the school, or every time he went to a new place, he went with it, and it was like a very supportive companion with him, right? Because he was like, this is the monster that will hold my feelings, or this is a monster that will hold all of these discomfort or whatever that I'm feeling, right? And then that actually helped the child become a little more comfortable with the school environment. That helped the child just make some friends, that after he started making friends, the school environment became a little more familiar, and that actually helped the child. And after the sessions also, like towards the end also, they encouraged the child to create this thing called a worry jar, which he would place in his room or something like that, where he would draw out his worries, or he would write out his worries, that he could later transform with art, right? So this was something that that he used. So this is worry jar is a CBT technique, basically, where this is a sheet that you give to children or you give it to adults, and you ask them about all the things that you sit at one particular time, and then you write down all the things that you're worried about, right? So in CBT, they're like, because they feel that when you're worried all the time, your mind is constantly spiraling. So in a worry jar, you take a particular time. You're like, you know what, I'm going to worry only from 5 to 6 p.m, and at 5 to 6 p.m you sit and you write in the jar, like in this worksheet, you just write about all the things you're worried about, and then you come back the next day, and then you see what are the things that are gone and what are the things that we are going to add back. So but here, in for this child particularly, we gave him a jar, like an actual physical jar, and we asked him to maybe write or draw that his feelings. So whenever he was feeling worried, he had to sit with that jar and just draw it out and put it in that jar. So the second he did it, there was an externalization, it was in that jar. And then in the session, we would open and we would discuss all of those, like the chits that he had put. So here in the early sessions, we can see that Kiran created various worry monsters with exaggerated features like large eyes and sharp teeth, sort of representing how his feelings felt at that time. And as we were going through the session, the monsters became smaller, and the monsters didn't have sharp teeth; they had more shorter teeth, and the colors also were more brighter. And through the process, we were able to understand that he was able to recognize this feeling, right? He was able to put a word, like when he was going out, when he felt uncomfortable, he was able to understand, okay, this is, I'm feeling this because I'm in a new place, right? And he also was able to externalize that feeling one, and also separate that feeling from himself. So that in the way through whatever had happened, like it was, I would say, 6 to 7 months, he was able to make it a little, all of this became a little bit easier for him to manage, right? So, as a result of the therapy, Kiran's panic attacks also became less frequent. He began using his worry jar at home to contain and manage his fears before they escalated. This art based intervention gave Kiran a sense of control over his anxiety and helped him build coping strategies. Right? So, at the end of the day, what happens is one, the child has control over his emotions, trying to understand, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Panic usually happens when we do not understand what is happening, right? When we are not sure what is happening, that is when we feel like, okay, this is what is, no, I'm not sure what's happening. So the second the child was able to recognize the pattern as to when he's starting to feel anxious, all of that, he was able to control that, a little bit better. And apart from that, it was not just art therapy. We were using different other forms of, therapy, CBT and all of that. So at that way, the child was able to build, a more, say, healthier coping around his anxiety, basically. um, so I think I'm at the end of my part of the um, workshop or the presentation, I would say. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Either you can put it in the chat, or you can, unmute yourself and ask me. We will take around 5 minutes to do like a small Q&A session if there is any questions. Um, I see two people's hand. Sanika, I think you can.
Um, Thank you. So, my question to you is that as we discussed, art therapy or art based activities can be a great sort of icebreaker for children, right? But often, what I see is when I ask the students to, draw something, or I just give them free time, I keep the colors, crayons, and art material in front of them, and we just get chatting, how was your day, XYZ, and I just let them know that FYI, you can draw if you want to simultaneously.
Mm,
They're very hesitant to draw, like or even if they draw, they keep looking for confirmation ki, oh, is this the way to go, is that the way to go, because
mm.
especially in schools art periods
Yeah,
are very structured, right? This
correct,
line
correct.
has to be 15 centimeters, that line has to be 5
Yeah,
centimeters. So
yeah.
how do we break that mold?
Okay, got it. I think again I think that's a very personal, I think, frustration that I've also felt with art is that I think I'm not sure if the Indian education system or whatever, but I think art has become like, because they want to grade art. Art cannot be graded. First thing, right? But we have made it like, okay, you know what? Only if it looks like a real person that it's art. Otherwise, it's not considered art. So they already have this preconceived notion of what art is, right? Art is something that's supposed to look good, or art is something that's supposed to, look aesthetically pleasing. Only that is considered art, right? So here we have to, I think that challenge comes back to us, is that we need to break the ice, right? We need to break that, this bound or this box that they have, saying that, this is how art is supposed to look. So what I have done with children, especially when they are like, ma'am, but this doesn't look like what, I want to draw something, but this doesn't look like that, or I don't know how to draw. So the second they say, I don't know how to draw, we start with them. You can maybe tell them, like, see, when I'm also so bad at drawing, and then we also scribble something. We also scribble, we draw something. We're like we are also drawing with them. So that is something I think helped with children that I have worked with, because I what I used to do is I would literally just take oil pastels, color the whole paper, and maybe just draw a triangle and circle. Like, you can carve out that triangle or circle with oil pastels, especially. So I'd be like, hey, look, see, this is also art, right? It looks so nice. Huh? And then you're like, then we ask them, what, can you just scribble on the paper, or can you just draw a circle, or just draw a triangle? So just get them to use the crayons a little bit, and then we will push them, right? And then we have to, I think that constantly we need to keep reassuring them also, is that, look, you're not graded for this. This is just something we can use, right? And then that's how I think we can start, is to just like get them to comfortable to even scribble on paper, because they feel like if you're using crayons, you have to draw something very good. They feel like they don't have permission to just scribble on paper, right? So I think we need to start from there. We have to maybe model that behavior. We have to show them, and I think then we can, hopefully that makes them a little more comfortable to just use the art material that's given.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. I think Aisha, you had raised your hand. After that, I think I'll come to Avishi's question.
Yeah, my question was just I think you mentioned that when people use clay, you were
Hmm.
wondering why they use it. Do you think it's because, like you said, this generation is using it a lot? Do you think it's because of like the usage of like phones and stuff a lot? Like maybe that's why people want to fidget a lot more?
Mm, I wouldn't say it's that. I think it's just a more, I would say, comforting. Like when you're saying coloring, you have to like draw on paper and you have to do it. But with clay, I feel like kids enjoy it a little more because they are able, like it's the sensory way. It's a little more interesting for them, and also because accessibility to clay is a lot more now, because I've noticed that every school somehow has clay that is just set for each child. But I think growing up we didn't have that. Clay was like a very it's very costly or very fancy, that only not everybody had access to it. But I think now but I think maybe growing up clay was more, I think, just sand and mud. Right now I think that kids don't generally play with sand or mud. Like growing up we would just go out and collect stones or like collect rocks. Now kids don't do that, right? So I think now parents are replacing that with play, or they're replacing that like with these sensory toys. So I feel like that's why they're also a little more connected to it. But everywhere I feel like sensory play is very very important for them. It generally helps them. I don't think it's connected to their smartphone usage.
Okay.
Avishi, I have a student in my school who always draws monsters and sharp features and body, and he somewhere lacks social communication and so emotional expression. That use if then okay. Avishi, I just wanted to understand: is this a child that you are working with in session, or is this just something you've noticed during your observations?
Ma'am, this thing I have noticed with him.
Okay. Okay. Then maybe I think we can start out that conversation not by asking him, okay, what do these monsters mean? But I think first we need to build a rapport with this child. When he's drawing, to just sit and just observe what he's like, not next to him, but if you see that okay, this is a time that he might be drawing, just sit behind him or sit somewhere where he's not looking at you, and just observe, when he's drawing these monsters, or then slowly we can just maybe start having that conversation with him, just out of curiosity. Just sit next to him, be like, okay, what is this? It looks very, what's the story behind this? Like, is this like somebody that like, is this something that you saw on TV? It looks interesting. Don't go in with judgment, but go in with that curiosity as to what is this? Is this something that you like? And then try to understand from there why the child is drawing the monster, right? And then we have to like and slowly intervene and see, like, is this something that the child is doing because he's having thoughts, what is happening? But always I think maybe approach it with a little bit of curiosity, and let the child build that story as to what this monster means, right, to him. Or I mean, I'm just not generalizing the gender, but because you said he, I'm assuming it's a boy. So yeah, I think we can start from there. Avishi, do you think that might work?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, miss.
Hmm. No worries. Um, so yeah, I think before we sort of wrap up, I think I had one, I would say something that I wanted everybody to take home and maybe try is a art journaling prompt. As I said, I really enjoy art journaling, and something that I also practice personally and I also use with my clients is, because it's the new year and all of us are in that spirit of, the new year's. You can just take a screenshot of this, or maybe take a photo of it on your phone, and it's a art journaling prompt. You can, the topic of the theme or whatever is a letter to your future self. So maybe what you can do is just write a letter to your future self, and you can decorate that pages with images, or like how people are doing a lot of mood boards right now. You can maybe add things like that, or drawings or symbols, or some anything, or colors that represent your future, or what you want for yourself. If you are interested to share it with me, you can, because I just love seeing everybody's artwork. So you can take a photo of my email and you can share it with me. If not, it's okay. It's just out of just something that's very close to me. So I just wanted to give this back to everybody, that you can, something you can try. Maybe today, through the weekend, anything. You can take a screenshot of this, take a picture. If you feel like sharing, you can share it to me on email. Yeah, Huma Biba.
Mom, what if we are not very good at drawing or
That's the thing. That's the thing. See, I was literally telling this earlier to the first question I got was that you don't have to be good at anything to do something, right? It is just art doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to look aesthetically beautiful. It is something that's personal to you, right?
yeah,
Everybody's letter to future self, everybody's aspirations, goals is different, right? So it will just be a reflection of that. I'm not going to judge based on how good it is or like whether it can be put up in the museum or something like that. It is just for you to express. And I think one more thing I want everybody to take away back with them is that you don't have to be like, like art doesn't have to be aesthetic. I think that's a very wrong notion that has been put into our heads. I don't know by whom, by society, whatever. But art is literally just taking a paper and scribbling is art, right? Art is supposed to empower us. It's supposed to make us free, right? We shouldn't. The cages are there for other parts of life, but art shouldn't be like that. And yeah, I don't want anybody to be good at art. I'm not judging anybody's thing. Just for you to reflect on about this particular topic. If you're interested, you can write to me. If not, it's just something you can keep. I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for giving your time and listening to me. Yeah, I'll see you soon, maybe in the next workshop that I conduct. Hope to see you all there. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
thank
ma'am.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Good day.